pushback against pro-life policies.
Shut it down! Shut it down!
Protesters complain about President Trump's executive order on abortion, replacing Obamacare. Democrats and some conservatives blast the replacement. A woman in charge.
It's very important to preserve what we received from the past.
Vatican correspondent Mary Shevlin introduces us to the first woman to lead the Vatican Museums. And Raymond Arroyo's amazing achievement. The host of The World Over joins me in studio to highlight 20 years at the network. On EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, March 8th, 2017. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Abortion activists march on the White House protesting one of President Donald Trump's most important pro-life policies. It comes on International Women's Day as women across the country stay home from their jobs and launch rallies across the country. It is part of the Day Without a Woman. It's a movement for gender equality. Correspondent Wyatt Goolsby was at the White House where that march ended. He joins us with details. Good evening, Wyatt.
Good evening, Lauren. Across the country, thousands of women chose not to work but to join rallies in dozens of cities. Here at the White House, it's abortion activists who are pushing back against the Mexico City policy, which prevents foreign aid from going to organizations that promote abortion. They claim Trump's policy is anti-woman, but pro-lifers say it's quite the opposite. Dozens of women march on the White House, protesting the president's international ban on abortion funding on this International Women's Day.
Literally saying the word abortion means that you will not be funded.
Like the Women's March in January after the president's inauguration, this march also had an agenda to oppose pro-life legislation.
We are here in solidarity with our coalition partners to oppose the global gag rule, which is an international anti-abortion policy.
Pro-lifers have praised Trump signing the Mexico City policy as one of his first acts in office. The president had promised the pro-life community he would not support abortion domestically or internationally with taxpayer dollars. Today, the Susan B. Anthony list tweeted a photo of Mother Teresa and a quote, "Abortion is profoundly anti-women. 3/4 of its victims are women, half the babies, and all the mothers." Trump, for his part, tweeted his support for women, writing, "I have tremendous respect for women and the many roles they serve that are vital to the fabric of our society and our economy. On International Women's Day, join me in honoring the critical role of women here in America and around the world." White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer has said the Mexico City policy is not only one that defends the unborn, he also says it's a responsible use of taxpayer dollars. He says it sends a signal around the world that the United States values human life. Lauren?
What did the press secretary say today about women who marched right in front of the White House?
Well, the first thing he said about this, Lauren, was that none of the White House female staffers skipped work today. He says everyone is working hard to advance the president's agenda. But secondly, he said everyone has the right to express themselves, but that women's contributions should be recognized 365 days a year. Lauren?
Wyatt Goolsby at the White House. Thank you. Speaker Paul Ryan predicts the Obamacare replacement plan will pass, but conservatives in his own party are creating major headaches tonight. This comes as two House committees are running a marathon debate on the GOP plan. Correspondent Jason Calvi reports from Capitol Hill. Jason?
Lauren, Democrats tried to delay today's debate, even using procedural rules. Speaker Paul Ryan today telling the press the bill is a conservative wish list, but some rank-and-file conservatives are concerned it's Obamacare light. Tonight, two House committees are still sparring over it, as they've done all day.
Let's call this bill what it is. A plan to create chaos in insurance markets.
Democrats blast the GOP Obamacare replacement during two committee hearings today.
Mr. Chairman, I have a motion. For purposes of offering an amendment in the nature of a substitute, the clerk will report. The clerk will report the amendment.
Mr. Chairman, a parliamentary inquiry.
And even House conservatives slammed their party's proposal for keeping some parts of Obamacare in place. They call the plan's refundable tax credits a costly new entitlement. Iowa Representative Steve King says he's leaning against it.
If you're counting votes and you're not to 218, the negotiations can take place anytime up until that gavel falls on that vote.
Behind these closed doors, House Speaker Paul Ryan told Republicans the president supports their plan and they should get in line. He predicts they'll make good on their promise of 7 years to repeal Obamacare.
I have no doubt we'll pass this because we're going to keep our promises.
Expect House leaders to put pressure on the renegades in their own party.
I'd hate to be the Republican and go home and say I couldn't help President Trump pass the repeal and replace bill. I voted with Nancy Pelosi and brought it down.
This bill also calls for defunding Planned Parenthood for 1 year.
And unfortunately, Planned Parenthood is an organization that is involved in abortions. And so this is our effort to bring transparency and accountability to this organization.
And tonight, conservative Republicans are meeting President Trump to talk about the bill. He's also having dinner with Senator Ted Cruz, who's raised his own issues with it. The president made clear to Republicans he met yesterday he'll be working with lawmakers who oppose the bill. Lauren?
And he's bringing them to the White House, working one-on-one. You know, Jason, the stakes are so high with what is likely going to be a very close vote. Is that right?
Right, with no Democrats backing it, Republicans can't afford to lose more than 2 votes in the Senate, 21 in the House. The outreach on Capitol Hill is intense. Next week, that group of conservatives, the House Freedom Caucus, is invited to the White House to bowl.
Okay, well, if that doesn't bring them together, I don't know what will. Hawaii is challenging, thank you, Jason. Hawaii is challenging President Trump's revised immigration order, saying it would block potential visitors and immigrants. The executive action bars new visas from 6 countries and temporarily shuts down America's refugee program. Hawaii filed a lawsuit against the president's first order. The nonprofit group, also in defense of Christians, says the president's travel order is a step in the right direction. In a statement, IDC says it supports the implementation of the necessary security measures, but also believes that the United States has a moral obligation to help the most vulnerable, especially victims of genocide and religious persecution. Archbishop Jose Gomez, the vice president of the U.S. Conference on Catholic Bishops, told me today that it's important to look beyond just the legal issues of immigration.
When we are talking about immigration, we are talking about people, parents and children, brothers and sisters, families. So it's not just about a legal situation or civic issue. It is about people.
You'll hear more of my conversation with Archbishop Gomez tomorrow on EWTN News Nightly. Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. ISIS gunmen wearing white lab coats storm a military hospital in Afghanistan, killing at least 30 people and injuring dozens of others. 4 gunmen were involved, including 2 suicide bombers who detonated their explosive vest once the group was inside the hospital. The Kabul attack set off clashes with security forces that lasted for hours. ISIS claims responsibility. The Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines is speaking out about the country's House of Representatives voting to bring back the death penalty. The conference's president wrote, "In the midst of Lent, we prepare to celebrate the triumph of life over death, and while we grieve that the lower house has voted for death, our faith assures us that life will triumph." He added, "They may have won, but it does not mean that they are right." At least 19 people are dead after a fire rips through an orphanage in Guatemala. About 24 others were hurt. It happened near Guatemala City. The orphanage has been criticized for overcrowding, alleged abuse, and escapes in the past. Despite changing its one-child policy, a two-child policy, China's population control policies continue to violate human rights. Joining us now is Reggie Littlejohn, founder and president of Women's Rights Without Frontiers. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Coming all the way from San Jose. In October 2015, China changed this decades-old policy of you only get one child to, okay, you can have 2 children. Is that making a real difference in reducing forced abortions or sterilizations?
Well, you see, the way the Chinese government announced this was extremely misleading. What they said was that they were abandoning or scrapping the one-child policy, and that gave the world the impression that all coercion was over, but it's not the case. Now, instead of basically forcibly aborting women after one child, they're forcibly aborting women after 2 children. And also the sex-selective abortion of baby girls is continuing. So we're very happy for the couples that can have a second child, but we don't want anybody to think that forced abortion isn't continuing. It's still illegal to have a baby if you are unmarried, and 3rd children are still illegal.
How prevalent are those sex-selective abortions?
Well, this is the thing. We're not going to know exactly because China conducts a census every 5 years and the next one's coming up in 2020, but the conditions still exist that always existed, which is that second daughters are highly vulnerable. There is just very strong son preference, so people will usually allow the first girl to be born, but then if they're allowed to have a second child, they want that second child to be a boy, and so girls are selectively aborted, and that's given rise to a situation where there's more than 30 million more men living in China than women, and that situation is continuing.
You have a very personal story as it relates to China. Would you mind telling us about that?
Are you talking about my daughter, Annie?
I am.
So yes, my husband and I have rescued 2 girls from China. They are the daughters of Zhang Lin, who's an activist in China who's been jailed and tortured, and when they could not silence him through that, they actually went and detained his 10-year-old daughter, Annie, out of her 4th grade elementary school. They detained her overnight. They would not allow her to go to school. They put her and her father under house arrest. When they escaped house arrest, they became fugitives, and then they were caught, and her father got word out to me asking if I could please help him get Annie out of China because she can't lead a normal life there. So we, with the help of Congressman Chris Smith, were able to get Annie out, and now we're raising her as our own daughter.
What an amazingly wonderful story. For people who are listening to what you have done, how can they help?
Well, we have something called a Save a Girl campaign in China where we can identify women through our network on the ground in China who have had ultrasounds and know they're pregnant with a girl and have scheduled themselves for an abortion, or have been given birth to a girl and their in-laws are pressuring them to abandon them. We will go to the door and say, please don't abort or abandon your baby girl. She's a precious daughter, and we will give you a monthly stipend for a year to empower you to keep your daughter. And so
we can figure Women's Rights Without Frontiers. You have a website. I think people can go there to learn more about this program.
That's right. They can help support that program, Save Lives in China.
Thank you so much, Reggie Littlejohn, president of the Women's Rights Without Frontiers. Women are playing a vital role in peacemaking. The Pontifical Academy of Science brought together women from 5 continents for Voices of Faith, which promotes peace and justice. Dr. Mireille Twigira shared her story, how she was forced to flee her native Rwanda at age 2 when the genocide occurred.
For me, this is a very important moment because people can get to hear my story and not just feel sorry for me, but also see ways they can help other people like me, like get a better education or get a safe place, open their homes to refugees like me.
Other invited speakers told their stories of fighting sex trafficking, shunning hatred amid civil war, and helping to heal the traumas caused by war.
The intent is to provide a network of people and women that support each other and endorse each other and help make each other stronger within the confines of the Catholic Church framework.
Voices of Faith would like to see women in more leadership roles in the church. International Women's Day is also celebrating women, marking their achievements, and our Vatican correspondent, Mary Shovlin, takes us to meet the new director of the Vatican Museums, Barbara Giada, the first woman to ever hold the position.
Inside these doors lie some of the most famous works of art in the world: historic papal chapels, former papal apartments, miles of masterpieces. As of January 1st, the Vatican Museums has its first female director, art historian Barbara Giada. I asked her how she reacted when she found out that Pope Francis had chosen her for the job.
The first impression was really surprise. I was not expecting it, and it makes me feel conscious of the importance of the task, that's for sure.
An important task for the Vatican since it relies on its museums as a major source of revenue, with over $300 million in gross revenues a year and at least $40 million in profits. Last year, the Vatican Museums had a record 6 million visitors, a record already on its way to being broken for 2017.
The first 2 months, we have an increase of 18,000 people in the 2 months, comparing to the other years. So we will have more than 6 million in this year, hopefully.
And for the millions who can't make it to Rome, IATA has already overhauled the museum's website, offering virtual tours in 5 languages, along with dozens of videos. This innovation can also showcase their work of preservation.
I do think that it's very important to preserve what we received from the past. On the main time, sharing it's one of our focus.
With 50 different galleries, it is one of the world's largest museums, 4.35 miles of exhibition space displaying 20,000 objects, a fraction of the 200,000 items in its collection. Of all the beauty contained within these walls, for Yata, a native of Rome, the real masterpiece is what she sees in the museum's Belvedere Terrace.
It's a place where you can face and handle, in a way, the entire museums, and at the same time you can be in direct contact with the Dome of St. Peter's Basilica and Rome, my city. I'm from Rome, so it's my city.
She is doing what she loves, she says, in the best place she could imagine. In Rome, Mary Shovlin, EWTN News Nightly.
Coming up, Prince Charles and the Pope, and the connection between faith and politics.
We know that the real truth is in the church.
How the Napa Institute is empowering Catholic leaders. Pope Francis will welcome the Prince of Wales and Duchess of Cornwall to the Vatican in April. It's the first time Prince Charles and the Holy Father will meet. It will take place during a tour to celebrate links among the UK, Romania, Italy, Austria, and the Vatican. One of the largest Marian sites in the world is in the Works in Croatia. A giant 55-foot statue of Our Lady of Loreto is being built right now. On a clear day, you'll be able to see it from the coast of Italy. You can read more about the Marian statue by going to our partners at CatholicNewsAgency.com. Here in Washington, the Napa Institute works to strengthen Catholic leaders in the teachings of the Church. They are leading a conference here focused on the intersection of faith and politics. Joining me now is John Meyer, Executive Director of the Napa Institute. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
What a great conference so far. I've been able to sit in and listen to some of the speakers. I want to explain to our audience what the Napa Institute's vision is. I've heard you say that it's to help America in the next America, which is really the secularization. And, you know, you've said to embolden Catholics to live and defend their faith with peaceful confidence. Exactly. What does all this mean?
Exactly. So Archbishop Chaput had set it up with 6 years ago when he wrote his letter, Catholics in the Next America, where he said it would be increasingly difficult for us to live out our Catholic faith in the public square. And what Napa does is try to use intellectual rigor and fidelity to the magisterium to form Catholic leaders in the faith so that they can confidently and peacefully defend it, making a meaningful difference. So we do that through formation, through liturgy, through camaraderie, connections with one another, and primarily through our main conference, but through other events like this one here in Washington, D.C.
You have 6 now.
We have 6 events this year. So
around the country.
And they range, but the main event in July is the big one. So.
You have said, this is fascinating to me as a member of the media, you have said that one of the challenges for American Catholics is that they are formed first by the media and second by the church. And that goes back to your original question about how we navigate the next America.
Exactly.
How do we get past that?
Well, I think symposiums like this one, we're trying to show Catholics that while they have a political party or a media affiliation or a media group that they love, it's the church that is where the truth lies. And that's a little bit what we're trying to do with the politicians here as well. It's the idea of relativism, that my faith is something that happens only in that section of my life, and that in political life.
Where you go to church on Sunday, and that's it.
Where whatever my news network of choice is, whatever they say is...
EWTN?
Whatever they say is as true as what the church says, but we know that the real truth is in the church.
Right.
And we want to show them the formation at a level where they understand the reasoning for the truth, just not what the truth is. So that way, they are better defenders of the faith and better Catholics in the long run.
All right. Thank you so much, John Meyer, Executive Director of the Napa Institute.
Well, thank you so much.
You can watch more of my interviews from the Napa Institute in the coming days on EWTN News Nightly, and we'll post each of them on our YouTube page. Up next, Raymond Arroyo joins us to talk about a major milestone, 20 years of the world over, plus a look at his new book. And Buried Treasure, how the fight against ISIS led to a stunning discovery. For 20 years, Raymond Arroyo has graced EWTN as the host of The World Over. Raymond Arroyo, welcome to the program. Congratulations on your 20-year anniversary.
20-year grace, I'm not so sure, but I've been around for a while.
You've been around the block.
Yeah,
you know, you have been here with EWTN. You are EWTN. Why did you come?
Well, Mother Angelica is EWTN.
Okay, all right, but you're number two.
And that's why I came. Mother Angelica, I was assigned as a reporter. I was at the Associated Press. I had worked for Robert Novak here in town. I was a Capitol Hill correspondent on television when a friend of mine who's an editor here in D.C. said, would you do a piece on this nun in Birmingham, Alabama, who founded a TV network? I'd never heard of her. My mother and grandmother in New Orleans knew exactly who Mother Angelica was. I quickly found out. We met down in Birmingham, hit it off like we'd known each other our whole lives.
Magic.
Well, the day I left, I was there for 2 days. On the day I left, she said, so what you gonna do? I said, well, I'm going back. I'm actually talking to a network about being their Capitol Hill correspondent when I leave the job I'm at. She said, well, why don't you come here, start our news operation? And I said, I'm not so sure. And it took a while. She stayed after me and wore me down. Here I am, 20 years later, still caught in her Venus flytrap.
Flytrap, don't say that. What are some of your favorite moments? I know it has to be interviewing a pope.
Well, that was one of them. Pope Benedict was amazing, because he's brilliant, and it was scary and intimidating. I mean, you've got one of the greatest theological minds in front of you, and you know, you're a 20-something-year-old kid going blah, 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 blah. But he was astounding. His light and joy came through in that interview. His kind of antic sense of humor that I love. It's the only time I've ever seen that part of him on camera, and it's the only English language interview he's ever done, probably the only one he will do. So I love that interview.
And you are always doing Jerry Lewis pieces.
Well, I've interviewed him twice, but I'd love to.
I always see them on the air in all of the reruns I watch.
If I could, I'd have Jerry on every night.
Why?
I love Jerry Lewis. Jerry Lewis is a genius. He's a guy who created playback that you see in any TV or film that's shot, TV show. They use playback. They shoot the scene and then they play it back. Jerry Lewis coined that, created the technology. He was a master at seeing visual comedy. He coined so much the pratfalls and the things we take for granted. So to spend time with a legend like this, for me, was just unbelievable. He's also very temperamental. He's not a guy who likes to sit for interviews. So the fact that he trusted me and opened up, I treasure my time.
You were the lion tamer. Right?
Yeah, well, he may have been the one taming the crazy one.
There you go.
See that?
Well, let's talk about your new book. It's the new one that's out this week. Will Wilder, The Lost Staff of Wonders.
Yes.
And this is the second installment of this very popular fiction series. What compelled you to write the fiction series and to continue it in your second book?
Reading to children like you do, reading to the kids, and we'd burned through so many of the series, and they wanted something else. Also, there's literacy, a big literacy problem in our country. 67% of kids are at reading proficiency in 4th grade, only 67%. All the rest are prime candidates for welfare and jail, according to the statistics. Literacy is so important. So I wrote the series to excite kids about an adventure and about the journey. I love that Will Wilder goes on these adventures with his whole family. His great Aunt Lucille, his mom, his dad, his brother and sister. It's one of the few middle grade series that allows that. And my publisher at Random House is Barbara Marcus, who discovered a little writer named J.K. something.
Oh
Rowling.
gosh, wait, Rowling, right,
and,
I got it.
And so to have Barbara mother this book and this whole series, it's been incredible. And the second book, Staff of Moses Goes Missing, Plagues of the Old Testament.
So you weave in religion, you've got family going on.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
All right, Raymond Arroyo, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Really appreciate it. Religious artifacts believed to be more than 2,000 years old are found inside a tunnel dug by ISIS. The items include Assyrian sculptures and pottery dating back to the 8th century BC. Excavating and recovering all the treasures will likely have to wait due to safety and security concerns. To read how ISIS inadvertently proves the Bible is historically accurate, head over to ncregister.com. That does it for us this evening. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, to all of you around the world, I'm Lauren Ashburn and Raymond Arroyo. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for a behind-the-scenes look at News Nightly. I'll see you again tomorrow night. Good night, and God bless.